Hey everybody, Taz from Critical Thinking Anarchist here. It's been a while. Things have changed a lot in my life. Ended a couple jobs, started a new job. Now working from home. The kid is, 9 months old. And things have been going in weird directions, but for the most part, it's been for the better. I'm hoping that with my new job, I'm going to be working from home. I've got an office set up downstairs, and hoping that I'll be able to start doing some more videos for you. In the meantime, this one hurts. So I've been a Kevin Smith fan since probably right around 1998, 1999. So back in 1997, someone introduced me to Clerks. And the first time I watched it, I'm like, what the hell is this? A black and white movie in this day and age? And, they just stand around talking in a store. What? I don't get it. And then in 1998, I had had two jobs by that point, and both retail, and I worked at Spencer's at that time. And I think about 6 months in, I rewatched Clerks, and I went, holy shit, this is my life. I see everything in this, and I understood the genius of it. Not too long after that, watched Mallrats. Of course, Spencer's being in a mall, Clerks and the Mallrats, one led into the other, and then I learned that Mallrats was filmed in Eden Prairie Mall, and that was just across town from where I was. I worked in Maplewood Mall. I mean, everything was just kind of one of those things of like, yeah, I have a connection to this guy. Later, of course, followed with Chasing Amy and then Dogma. I might have actually seen Dogma in the theater. I think that was the first movie of his I probably saw in the theater. And I mean, I've been a Kevin Smith fan ever since. I have been there for him pretty much any chance I got. Been to one of his stand-up shows and got to meet him, shake his hand. I was the only person that shook his hand. Everybody else gave him a hug. And I asked him what he gave up for Lent that year because someone else took the question that I wanted to use, and then I couldn't remember my backup question, so I had to go to something off the top of my head, and it was during Lent that time. So I mean that's just a long way of saying I've been a Kevin Smith fan for a very long time, and I had been pretty much willing to watch and listen to and buy anything he did until he started his That Kevin Smith Club stuff. So even when he started smoking weed and kind of making some of those weirder movies, I was like, I'm going to follow him through this. And I generally enjoyed them. I didn't care for him smoking weed and telling other people that they should smoke weed. Personally, I think that's a decision each person should make for themselves. And B, I'm not for drugs, alcohol, weed, all that stuff. I'm not for any of that. But then again, I'm also not for advocating anyone does or does not do it, unless it's my own family. But even still, I still followed the man, and he was still there, being Kevin, as far as I saw. But you could tell there was a change, and I think the big part of the change was when he had his heart attack. And I think he realized, I've been doing my thing. I've been working with my friends for all this time, and working with my friends has been great, but I haven't done anything for myself. He's like, I kind of made, made Red State for myself. I made Tusk for myself. I made Yoga Hosers for my kid. But he really didn't get into Hollywood yet. He hadn't done Hollywood. He'd always been Kevin Smith from New Jersey in Hollywood. So it made sense to me that he kind of started doing things for himself, and I didn't have a general problem with it. I didn't care for that Kevin Smith Club stuff because I'm like, okay, so especially with the prices, because for like a clerk, I think you're paying like $10 or $15 a month, and then you move on up paying more and more and more for different things, and all you get is access to his stuff, which most of it had been free. Now, granted, you were getting daily content at this point, I think, and he was giving out signed scripts and a couple other things, but not that it's difficult to get anything signed by Kevin Smith. I mean, he signs quite a bit. It's not like his stuff is worth a ton when it's signed. It's worth a little bit more, but he signs so much that it's not hard to find his autograph. So the only reason you do it is for yourself, because his autograph isn't really going to be worth much when he dies or whatever. So there's low collectability on having the autograph. Anyway, again, long story on that. So again, I didn't have a problem with him doing that. I was kind of annoyed by the whole that Kevin Smith Club. But I'm like, well, as long as his other podcasts are free, whatever. I can listen to Hollywood Babylon. I can listen to a couple of the other ones. And really, I at that point, I was pretty much just listening to Hollywood Babylon because my commute to work had gotten a lot shorter between the jobs that I had. And then Stitcher did an update and lost all the things I was subscribed to, and I was just like, screw it. I don't need to. My job at that point was only 7 minutes away driving, so I didn't really need to listen to podcasts because I only got maybe 15 minutes a day unless I did shopping or something. So the past year, I hadn't really been listening to any Kevin Smith podcasts at all along with that. And I used to like his Fat Man on Batman, Fat Man Beyond, whatever it is called now. He and Mark Bernardin got a bit too political, Mark Bernardin especially. And I'm like, I'm listening to this stuff for entertainment. I'm not listening to this stuff to hear your guys' view on politics. So I threw that one aside too. So pretty much it was just Hollywood Babylon. Listening to him and Ralph Garman make fun of Hollywood. He can't do that anymore. He can't make fun of Hollywood anymore because he is Hollywood. So when it came time about a year and a half ago that he announced that he was going to be in charge of Masters of the Universe, I was fairly excited at the time. A little cautiously, kind of cautiously optimistic, but for the most part excited. And when I was a kid, I was a big He-Man fan. Loved He-Man, even loved She-Ra. Loved the couple crossovers that they did. And I wish I had it. It's at my parents' house, but I have a picture of my cousin and I, and my aunt and my mom. So his mom and my mom bought us He-Man satin embroidered jackets. I mean, these were blue, purple satin with He-Man embroidered on the back. I'm thinking they were knockoff. I'm thinking they're either Indonesia or China. But I mean, they cost a lot. They were very expensive. That's how into He-Man we were. And unfortunately, when I turned 10, I believe it was, I was like, He-Man's gay. He-Man's get rid of that. So I had my poor mom de-embroider this satin jacket because I liked the jacket. The jacket still fit at the time. And she pulled out thread by thread everything on this thing. And I think I only wore it for another couple months after that because, of course, then I had a fairly large growth spurt. And what good is a satin jacket to me, whatever. And I don't know, it may or may not be in their house still, but it really is too bad that I did that. It's one of those things, like, looking back, I wish I had just not said anything and that maybe my mom would have kept it in a box or a bin or something like that, because that thing was A, gorgeous, and B, that might be a collectible by now. That might have been worth money, even as a knockoff, non-official licensed merchandise. It probably would have been worth a fair amount, especially now. And I never got into the 2002 version of He-Man. I didn't even know it existed. I probably did for a little bit, but at the time I was in college and really wasn't aware of animation at the time, which is kind of ironic because now I'm trying to get into voiceover work and really understanding voiceover artists and all the people that are going through that. And I really wish I did. Looking back at it, it was actually a decent show, really well done. So that brings us to now. So now's version of Masters of the Universe, not He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, just Masters of the Universe. Why? Because Filmation owns the rights to certain things and probably owns the rights to He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So even though they can use He-Man, they can't use it in a title or something. Who knows? IP rights are screwy on all these types of things. So Kevin Smith gets kind of called out by ClownfishTV. They had a source who was willing to give them a script. Now, they declined the script, but the source gave them kind of the synopsis of the show. And the basic synopsis was that something happens to He-Man, and Tila steps in and fills the role and saves the day and is more of a He-Man than He-Man. And they said this on Twitter, didn't tag Kevin Smith. They're like, hey, you know, we got this from a source, and it was, we're not sure. We have concerns. Who knows what Kevin Smith was doing? I don't know if he got a retweet tag or if he found it himself, because he's a big Twitter user. So it's very, very probable he just looked up Masters of the Universe, like, oh, what's going on today? And saw it, and was like, fuck this shit. Mean tweeted him, said, you know, wow, you know, we wish we could have used these types of notes in the writer's room when we were doing this stuff. A little late now. Now, if he had left it at that, it kind of would have been kind of funny. A little mean, but kind of funny. But of course, he didn't leave it at that. He then goes on and be like, wow, I don't know about your faux source, but as the person in charge of the show, blah, 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 and writer of, you know, at least one of the episodes, I can categorically tell you this is bullshit. And Clownfish TV was like, all right, sorry, you know, hey, we hope it is, and, you know, we look forward to seeing it. And as the time got closer and closer, more and more of these rumors are leaking out from people who are working on the show that, hey, this is Tila's show. Heman kind of goes away, and this is Tila's show. And, of course, you got Kevin Smith's devout followers. Now, again, I was among these people. I mean, it is not hard to get caught up in celebrity. And, God, it sucks because you want to follow celebrities because they do these cool things. They lead cool lives. And for the longest time, I wanted to be Kevin Smith. I wanted to be, like, famous to the point where people recognize me and would be like, hey, let me buy you a drink. Hey, here's this that I made. Here's this I did. You know, they give you the stuff that they've done and things like that. Or here's my tribute to you. That would have been cool. But not so famous that anyone gives a shit what you do in your normal life. You know, that was basically Kevin Smith. You know, people would be like, hey, Kev's walking up Runyon Canyon. That's awesome. You know, hey, Kev, how you doing? He'd be like, hey, everybody, how's it going? And that would be about it. You know, they see him at an airport or at a restaurant or whatever, like, oh my God, Kev, can I have a picture with you? Sure, man, absolutely. Da-da-da. You know, thanks. And, you know, 2 minutes, done. And then he just, you know, you go about your day and you just feel good about yourself because little things like that happen. And every once in a while you do a signing or you do some other things and you make a little extra money and you live a good life. I mean, there was absolutely nothing wrong with Kevin's life. And then he wanted to go Hollywood. And again, it's tough to deny someone to chase some of these dreams. I mean, especially when you start hanging out with like J.J. Abrams and Greg Grunberg and whatever, and you see Greg Grunberg. He's the best friend of J.J. Abrams. Greg Grunberg is an okay talent. I mean, he's nothing special. He's an everyday guy for the most part, just like the rest of us. And he's got a really famous buddy. So anytime his famous buddy does something, he calls him up and is like, so what do you got for me in your new project? And JJ's like, oh yeah, okay. All right, well here's 5 minutes of screen time. And Greg's like, cool. All right, right on, thanks. You know? And he gets to rub elbows with the bigwigs and the super celebs and everything like that. And again, leads a good life. And Kev's kind of started thinking, he's like, why am I not doing this? I could be doing this. I could be that guy. I wanted to play in my own sandbox. I want to play with my friends from back home. Well, they're done playing in the sandbox. I can go back to that sandbox anytime and invite them over, and everybody will play in there for a little bit, and then we can all do our own things again. So he wanted to go to Hollywood, and he wanted to make He-Man. And he had all these things going on. And he started, like I said, he went after Clownfish TV for some reason. And for some reason, Clownfish TV just stuck in his craw. Still stuck in his craw. He still will not let it go. Now, Clownfish TV has tried letting it go several times. But Kevin Smith is just, like, holds on to that tweet from a year ago. And he's just like, and these motherfuckers over here, a year and a half ago, said this shit. And they're just like, yeah, let it go. If you let it go the first time, nobody would be saying anything. But, of course, he's got his, he's got his fucking followers who just hang on every word he says. And they won't let it go either. Because anytime anything happens, they're like, so Kev, what about this? Remember when Clownfish said this? And he's like, oh yeah, fuck Clownfish. So between the two, between his followers and himself, they just will not let shit go. And again, I was mostly that way with them, but of course, I have my own life. I don't let shit stick in me, especially when it deals with a celebrity. Even Kevin Smith, when I was one of his bigger stands. I don't let it sit there just getting in my head, and like I'll sit there and be like, wow, that was like 6-7 months ago. Why are you still bugging about that? But whatever. And there have been plenty of things at the over the years that other people have been like, oh, Kev, oh man, oh, I can't believe you're da 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 da, and Kev will respond and everything. And of course, they're like, oh my God, Kevin Smith used me as a quote tweet. Kevin Smith used me as a he replied to me, da 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 da, and so they try and do everything they can to get quote tweeted, to get replied to, all this other shit. And if you look at a lot of Kevin Smith's retweets and quote tweets, or not retweets, quote tweets and replies, and pretty much meaning quote tweets, it's usually someone who's criticizing him. It's usually someone who's criticizing him, and he can't let it fucking go. And then his followers go after him. And he's like, well, I can't control my followers. Now, I will say, yes, for the most part, you can't control your followers. If someone has just a shitty thing to say about you, there's no constructiveness into it, there's no concern into it, they're just being a dick, fine, go ahead. Let the dogs of hell loose on these assholes. But for the most part, a lot of people are tweeting at him concerned about something. Hey man, you're involved in this, and I've got some concerns, I've got some questions. And Kev takes it the fucking wrong way because he's so fucking high and his ego is so fucking small that he can't let it go. And he quote tweets it and he's like, oh yeah, you piece of shit, da 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 da. Now, of course, most of the time he doesn't say you piece of shit. He tries to be playful, but snarky, but playful, and then lets his followers do the mean work. Now, he never tells his followers, hey man, don't go after these people. They're just people like you. Don't go after them. He never does that once. And it's funny because I know, when following Clownfish, when following Geeks and Gamers, when following Boogie2988, when following, almost all these other people, unless it's a blue check mark, they sit there and be like, don't follow these people, don't retweet them, don't quote tweet them, don't reply to them. It's not worth it. I'm doing it for my video. Otherwise, let it go. Now, whether people let it go or not, that's up to them. But again, the responsible person on YouTube, especially, and on Twitter, is going to say, don't go after these people. It's not worth it. But not Kevin. Kevin likes the attention, and he always has liked the attention. He's the baby of his family, and he's a fucking baby now. So anyway, he comes out swinging and saying that this is He-Man's show. He doesn't step aside for nobody, and Tila doesn't, basically Tila isn't the one wearing the pants or whatever, even though she's wearing pants now. So right before the show comes out, he does let a big spoiler slip in that, of course, Orko dies. He's like, we're going to build him up and then kill him, and you're going to be like, no, I just liked him. Now, let's go ahead and get into the show. The show is not bad. It's not good, but it's not bad. The animation, as everybody has said, fantastic. I'll even go one further because there's several people who kind of ignored this one. The score is great. Bear McCreary did the score. The score is great. So the animation and the score are spot on. The stories are really just boring. They're uninspired. There's really, outside of his M. Night Shyamalan fucking plot twists, which you see a mile away, just like M. Night Shyamalan plot twists, there really isn't anything in there. Now, my big problem is, because of the gore involved in these, because of the subject matter, you really don't want to show them to, a kid like under 10. But also because the stories are very simplistic, you don't want to show them to a kid over 10, because they're just boring. Basically, if the kid has watched any television in his life, it's going to be like, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. Again, the stories, they just aren't that inspiring. Now, it's only 5 episodes, and I think this is where Netflix also screwed up. I think this would be better as a weekly episode. So you drop one a week. And then people would have been like, oh my God, here's a cliffhanger, here's a cliffhanger, here's a cliffhanger. And they would have got, they would have got a little over a month out of this. And I don't know if the second half of this season is done, because it's 10 episodes for a season. This is part 1, then they're going to drop part 2 later. But if they could have, it would have been better to drop all 10 in a weekly split like that. But Netflix doesn't really like the whole weekly thing. They like letting people binge. But again, I think the problem with this one is that you couldn't sit there and digest each episode for a little bit. So you got to watch a kind of crappy 2.5 hour movie and go, eh. But yeah, I mean, it just really wasn't good. The voice acting was all over the place. So we'll start with He-Man. With He-Man, you got Chris Wood, and Chris Wood is in Supergirl, and he's kind of like George Clooney in Batman, you know, where he's not really a good Bruce Wayne, he's not really a good Batman. He's an okay both, but he just doesn't do enough of either. To kind of liken it to another superhero, Prince Adam and He-Man are very much Clark Kent and Superman. Prince Adam is, and the animation shows this very well. This is one of the few times where the animation like really did a good job in He-Man, because the original one you had He-Man who was the big bulky man and just massive and full of muscles, and he was kick-ass. And then you had Adam, who was a big, bulky man and massive and full of muscles, but covered in a shirt. And the guy that played him, he would go, "Hi, I'm Prince Adam." Da 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 da. Now, I mean, it was a very adult voice. But again, in the original He-Man, he was an adult. And then when he became He-Man, he's like, "I have the power." So okay, you got the big booming voice to go along with it, and he did a good transition between the two. Now, I mean, I didn't quite believe the Prince Adam even at 5 years old. I was kind of like, God, it just sounds weird. But you believed He-Man. In the 2002 version, they made Prince Adam more of like a late teenager. And he was voiced by the same guy who did Leonardo in the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon. I think it's the same voice. Or it's at least one of the voices from that, I believe. But again, he's like squeaky and da-da-da, you know. And then, of course, when it goes to He-Man, I'm pretty sure they got a completely different voice actor, because it's, "I have the power!" And again, the big, deep, booming voice. And you're just like, oh, I love it. And that transition between the two really got you into both being separate characters. Really got you into the Clark Kent Superman of it all. In this one, the animation got him right. Because Prince Adam is small and meek, and he doesn't have the big muscles and things like that. And then when he transforms into He-Man, it's just muscle and mass and huge. But Chris Wood's voice is basically the same during both. So when he's Prince Adam, he's like, "Hey everybody, I'm Prince Adam." And when he's He-Man, he's like, "Hey everybody, I'm He-Man." But granted, you only get to see like 3 minutes of He-Man in the entire show. There's a couple flashbacks. There's the opening sequence, but aside from that, there's really no He-Man. When they show him, it's Prince Adam, and that would have been fine. That would have been fine if you had just been straight up with that, or just said, "Hey, watch the show, make your decision then." So, like I said, Chris Wood's fine. He's not great. He doesn't hold up to the previous incarnations of He-Man. Sarah Michelle Gellar. I love Sarah Michelle Gellar. I think she's a good actress. I think she's, I've loved her since Buffy, and I would follow any project she does, at least give it a chance. I don't buy her as Teela for a second. I don't buy the way she voices her. Her voice does not fit the body. Her voice doesn't fit the actions. Now, I'm not entirely sure if that's her fault or if that's the animator's fault, because I think in the original versions and in a lot of cartoons, animators tend to animate characters to fit the voice. Like, you come up with a base, and then as you hear the voice, you tweak that base a little bit to the character, to the voice. Sarah Michelle Gellar doesn't fit at all, not even a little bit. Her voice style doesn't fit, her inflections don't fit, and the acting she does just doesn't fit. Nothing fits. I mean, if you've watched it, you're just sitting there like, it's just not right. Something is just not right. The big thing is that her voice is, I don't want to say whiny. It's not whiny, but it's like scratchy, stretched out, and it should be more smooth and just a little bit deeper than what Sarah Michelle Gellar has. Evil Lynn, Lena Headey, I love her. I think she did great. I think she has it. I don't question her for a second. Orko is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. He's only in there for 3 minutes. So again, not quite the same as the original Squeaky with the distortion, but I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with the change. It fits. But again, he's only in there for like 3 minutes. There's a few others. Triclops is okay. Again, nothing really good or bad. Because a lot of the villains aren't really in it much. Even a lot of the heroes aren't in it much. They just kind of are. But, I mean, they're fine. For the most part, everybody else is fine. They totally wasted Alan Oppenheimer. And if you know who Alan Oppenheimer is, I mean, he's been a part of your childhood, whether you know it or not. He was Falkor in Neverending Story, the original version anyway. He was several voices in the original He-Man. He was Skeletor in the original He-Man, as well as several other voices again. He was just wasted in this. Again, he was only in there for like 2 minutes. Tony Todd's in there, and while I'm not particularly keen on the character, it's hard not to love Tony Todd and his voice. And he is so perfect. And then we come to the last one. The Joker, Skeletor, Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill's voice and his demeanor and everything else are just too iconic at this point. And they are the Joker from the Batman the Animated Series. They just are. Basically, that's what he's playing every single time he voices a character. He can't deviate from it anymore. He doesn't even try. And I don't know, maybe he wanted to do something different. Maybe he was originally planning on doing something different. And Kevin's like, no, do the Joker voice as Skeletor. And you're like, really? Yeah, people love it. Again, it doesn't fit. All I see is the Joker. I don't see Skeletor. Which sucks because Skeletor is gorgeous in this version of the show. I would watch this version of the show. I would watch this version of the show if they had Skeletor taking over for the first 5 episodes. If he killed He-Man and it was more focused on Skeletor and Teela has to save He-Man, Prince Adam or whatever, if that happened, if it was more focused on Skeletor, God, would I watch this show. And I would be sitting here shouting its praises. Because that would have been exciting. Even with Mark Hamill doing his Joker voice as Skeletor, that still would have been an exciting show. Because, as many writers have said, at least in the movies, it's more fun to write for the villain. And they could have written for the villain. And they will be writing for the villain in the next 5 episodes. But they should have done that in this. They should have done that in the first 5 episodes. But yeah, like I said, you never see anything other than the Joker. So now it comes to the writing. And again, the writing, I kind of said the storylines are bland and everything else. The writing is, again, just mediocre, uninspired. But one of the big problems is that they do the same thing that Stephen Moffat did in Doctor Who. And that is just hit you in the face with stupid, obvious jokes. And they're so stupid. And they're such low-hanging fruit. Like, they don't even try to go for better jokes. And this is where it's tough because, like, technically it's a kid show. So they're gonna get the low-hanging fruit. But good shows write on multiple levels. The base show was for the kids. The base show of He-Man was for the kids. But there were usually a couple other levels in there as well. One for the older kids and then one for the adults who are watching with the kids. And go back and watch 80s shows and cartoons, definitely in the 90s ones, but even in the 80s ones, they did it. Like if you go back and watch Animaniacs and that, yeah, it's all over in there. So yeah, when you're watching 90s and 80s shows, you'll see them hit some of the low-hanging fruit, because obviously they're going to hit the low-hanging fruit. But then they'll hit another one, and you're like, I didn't get that when I was a kid. And then they'll hit some of those other ones. You're like, oh my God, I definitely didn't get that when I was a kid. Holy fuck, that was for the adults in the audience. This doesn't have any of that. This has nothing for the adults. This has nothing for the older kids. This is 100% for the under 10s. And it's sad. You see the potential in this show. And again, maybe the second half will blow everybody away who decide to continue watching. I barely have any desire to watch the second half. We'll see. But the whole thing is that, Kevin Smith stopped being old school Kevin Smith. He stopped being hungry. Now he's just, as he says, he's chasing whimsy. So he wants money. He wants Netflix money. He's been begging for Netflix money for the past 5 years. Or he had. I don't know if he still has any of these things, because of course He kept getting turned down. But he's got like 4 or 5 projects, including Clerks 3, which he's writing now. But he had Moose Jaws. He had the one hockey movie, with Mitch Albom's, I believe it was Mitch Albom's idea behind the script, kind of focusing on that. He had a whole Canadian thing going on, and he wanted Netflix to pick it up. And Netflix was like, no. And I think Netflix said, hey, we've got some projects for you. Like, if you want us to fund something, scratch our back, we'll scratch yours. And I think this was the scratch our back portion. Because I don't think they had anybody that was really interested in directing another cartoon, really. And Kev was like, yeah, I'll do it, whatever, what is it? And they said He-Man. And you're like, yeah, all right. So I think that's what happened. I think he's doing it for the money, as they say, which sucks, because that's not Kevin Smith. But that's the way he's been for the last several years. Kevin has been all about the money for some reason. But, again, and that's probably because he had such a hard time getting several of the projects funded, and they didn't get funded, and then he had a tough time going for Jay and Silent Bob reboot, with all these studios combining and trying to sell to each other. It's probably getting tougher and tougher to find a good studio to work with that will actually shell out the money. So I'm gonna guess this was just his way. I don't think he gives a shit at all about He-Man, but his fucking ego does. I think it's just about money. He needs his next projects funded, and he needs a platform to put him out on, since movie theaters are no longer going to be a thing, and physical media is barely a thing. So you've only got streaming. And he knows after Jay and Silent Bob reboot, and I'm sure he's looking at his receipts from his That Kevin Smith Club, that he can't really fund things himself like he used to, because people are sick of his bullshit, and people are getting more and more sick of his bullshit, and now he jumped in his own way, and I don't think Hasbro is going to be very happy with him over the next couple weeks. He might not get his money. He might have fucked himself over. They might look at him and be like, well, you know what, Hasbro was going to be all about this, and they were going to shell out all this money and everything else, but their toy sales just collapsed because you couldn't keep your goddamn mouth shut. So we're not giving you shit. It sucks. It sucks to watch, one of the few people you thought was good, sell out, basically. He sold out a long time ago, but he at least tried to remain an independent filmmaker. He kept saying that. He's like, I'm an indie filmmaker, it's metal. But he never saw accolades. He never got the big paychecks. He never got the awards. And I think he wants that. And again, there's nothing wrong with wanting that, but you can't fuck your audience and then try and get money from them. You can't be Andy Kaufman. There's only one Andy Kaufman, and Andy Kaufman took a long time to learn that formula on how to make people laugh, piss them off, and make them laugh again. And he didn't succeed a lot of the time. You can't be Andy Kaufman. You don't want to be Andy Kaufman. Andy Kaufman fucking died at a young age because, think karma, basically. Anyway, that was a long rambling thing. I apologize, everybody. A lot of the stuff has been building up for a while. And, of course, being such a big Kevin Smith fan and an old school OG He-Man fan, and watching someone just take it and just do what they do in this current age, where they just shove it down the toilet. Because why would you want something good? Why would you want something that lasts? Why would you want something that people can be proud of showing their kids? Anyway, if you guys liked it, and if you made it through, 35, 40 minutes, whatever this ends up being after I edit it down, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. If you liked it, please give me a like and share it. If not, thanks for, putting up with my BS. And, like I said, hopefully I can get to more of these soon. You guys take care.